Meet Pazuzu Algarad, the Satanist who buried bodies behind his house of horror. He performed animal sacrifices, filed his teeth into points, and rarely bathed. Yet Pazuzu Algarad still had two fiancées who assisted him with multiple murders in his North Carolina house of horrors. The next time your neighbor does something you don't like, just consider yourself lucky that you never lived next to Pazuzu Algarad. A self-proclaimed Satanist, Algarad spent his days making animal sacrifices, drinking blood, and having orgies in his home. It was not until he was arrested and charged with murder that the nightmare came to an end. Who was Pazuzu Algarad? Pazuzu Algarad, born as John Alexander Lawson, Pazuzu legally changed his name in 2002 to conform with his satanic beliefs. The surname, Ila Algarad, means the Lord of the Locusts in Arabic. At some point, Algarad and his mother relocated to Clemens, North Carolina. Patricia Gillespie, who produced and directed the documentary series The Devil You Know About Pazuzu Algarad, said it was difficult to get a true grasp of his life since he often reinvented stories about his childhood. As Gillespie put it, he told people he was from Iraq, he told people his father was some high priest. But the people who knew him as a child described him as a little off-kilter, a little emotional. Things that might indicate the beginning of a mental illness, harming animals, consuming alcohol and drugs at a very early age. John Lawson's mother, Cynthia, spoke of her son's mental health issues, which started at a young age. He was diagnosed with several mental illnesses, including schizophrenia and agoraphobia. While Cynthia initially got Algarad the psychiatric help he needed, she ran out of money and was no longer able to afford treatment for him. So his mental health deteriorated very quickly. After his name change, Algarad aimed to ostracize himself from society, covering his face in tattoos and filing his teeth into points. He would tell people that he regularly made animal sacrifices and even claimed to be able to control the weather. Algarad drew others who felt socially excluded toward him, and encouraged them to engage in debauchery. Algarad also had a way of attracting women. Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock were two of his known fiancées who frequented his home. Pazuzu Algarad's house at 2749 Nob Hill Drive became a hub for those outcasts and misfits. They could come and stay for as long as they wanted. Algarad did not care what they did in his home. Activities at Algarad's home included self-harm, drinking the blood of birds, performing rabbit sacrifices, doing copious drugs, and staging orgies. Obviously, the house was in dire condition. There was garbage everywhere, animal carcasses lying around, and blood smeared on the walls. It was dark and reeked of decay. Satanic messages and pentagrams were painted all over the property. In October 2010, prior to any remains being found on his property, Pazuzu Algarad was charged with accessory after the fact of involuntary manslaughter. In September 2010, the body of Joseph Emmerich Chandler was discovered in Yadkin County. Algarad was accused of concealing information from investigators and allowing a murder suspect to stay at his house. On October 5, 2014, 35-year-old Algarad and his fiancée, 24-year-old Amber Birch, were both arrested after the skeletal remains of two men were found buried in Algarad's backyard. On October 13, the men were identified as Joshua Frederick Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch, who had both disappeared in 2009. Shortly after the arrest of Algarad and Birch, Algarad's other fiancée, 28-year-old Crystal Matlock, was charged in connection with the death of one person whose body was found. She was suspected of helping with the burial of Wetzler. It was later alleged that Algarad had killed Wetzler in July 2009 and Birch had helped bury his body. Meanwhile, Birch allegedly killed Welch in October 2009 and Algarad had helped with that burial. Both men had died as a result of a gunshot wound to the head. Soon after the remains were found on the property, county housing officials deemed the home unfit for human habitation. In April 2015, Pazuzu Algarad's house of horrors was demolished. Neighbors couldn't be happier when it was finally gone. In the early hours of October 28, 2015, Pazuzu Algarad was found dead in his prison cell at Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina. The death was ruled a suicide. He bled to death as a result of a deep cut on his left arm. On March 9, 2017, Amber Birch pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, armed robbery, and accessory after the fact to murder. Tommy Dean Welch had reportedly been at Algarad's home, along with Birch and others. Prosecutors said Birch shot him twice in the head with a .22 caliber rifle as he sat on the couch. Birch was sentenced to a minimum of 30 years and 8 months in prison with a maximum of 39 years and 2 months. Crystal Matlock pleaded guilty to conspiracy to accessory after the fact to first-degree murder on June 5, 2017. She was sentenced to a minimum of 3 years and 2 months with a maximum of 4 years and 10 months in prison. Although a few years have passed since Pazuzu Algarad cast a shadow on Clemens, he continues to live on in infamy for his bizarre and horrific crimes in North Carolina.